Hello, Bio 4, and welcome to part 3 of senses. And we were looking at the vestibular apparatus that contains the utricle and the saccule. Okay, and we know that they're involved in equilibrium, and that's about as much as we said. So let's go to this diagram here. We're looking, remember, at that spot. That's the entryway, essentially, this region here. That's the vestibule. And this is going to be semicircular canals, and this is cochlea. So we'll leave those aside. We're looking just here. And if you were to dissect it and look inside, you see that there are some neurons oriented in a very interesting way. So first of all, look at this here. It's sort of horizontal like this. And here there's a little stage for these neurons that's completely vertical. Do you notice the difference? And this, again, we said was important in balance. So why is it that we have this macula utriculi, or the utricle, right, that has something that has a little stage like this for its neurons in that position, and the saccule here that is exactly vertical to that, in that position. And this is all inside the petrous portion of the ear, remember? Okay, so this is enlarged for you, sort of too enlarged. It's lost its acuity here, but that's okay. We can see how it's flattened up. And these locations are going to detect linear acceleration. Okay, linear, not rotational. Not if you're spinning around, but if you're accelerating in a straight line, then the saccule and the utricle are going to detect this. So these guys here are yelling and screaming because they're at some sort of park. Could be boardwalk. I don't recognize the purple things there. That will shoot you up in the air and then shoot you back down and shoot you up in the air. So that's linear acceleration, not horizontal but vertical, correct? Or you could be in a car and you're accelerating fast and then you're on the horizontal line. So let's distinguish those. The utricle is back and forth, and you have this head motion in a car. It's horizontal acceleration, right? You're going to accelerate and your head goes back a little bit and then you sort of catch up. Utricle. Saccule then is going to detect up and down head motion, like in an elevator or in this wonderful ride that drops you from I don't know how many feet, and that some people enjoy. Not I. Okay, utricle, then horizontal, saccule, vertical. What's that mean? Well, these regions, I called it a stage or a platform for hair cells. So these little neurons that are called hair cells, because they look like little hairs, but they're really neurons, lie nearly horizontally on the floor of the utricle, and they lie nearly vertically on the wall of the saccule. So let's look. If you have this again, and you have one like this, and you have these neurons that are like in this position, or conversely, oh sorry, I don't need this one, conversely like this, and then you have neurons that are coming out in this position. So what's that going to do? Imagine yourself with something in the ear like this, and then you take off fast when the light changes. It was red, it's now green, you go off. What's going to happen to these guys? So if they were upright like this and you went that way, they're going to bend like this because you just took off, right? And these are going to bend backwards. And if you're in an elevator and you have this going on like this, and you're going back up, then in the elevator, these little neurons, they're going to do this. So they are subject to what gravity is doing and how it's affecting them. Okay? I'm skipping the clickers. So this utricle, or macula utriculi, in a better picture has the platform that I told you with a vestibular nerve. And then look at these. So these purple ones are all neurons that is sitting there and upright, and in the event of you taking off in the car that way, right, what's going to happen is that these little guys are all going to bend over that way because they're going to be left behind. In order for this to work well, they need a little bit of pressure. They can't be just these little neurons standing up and down. So the pressure that they have, one is that they're in this gel-like structure. Do you see this sort of gelatinous stuff? And on top of that are these little rocks, otoliths. Otoliths are rocks. So you have rocks inside your ear, and it provides weight, right? It provides weight so that when you accelerate in this direction, it's going to accentuate the bending of these little hairs backwards. Does that make sense? If, however, you were Spider-Man and you're going up and down a wall, then the tilt is going to be different. Instead of straight out, the tilt is going to be down in this direction instead of straight out. And they too have the gel, and they too have the otoliths that are just going to accentuate that movement. I like the hairbrush analogy, where you have the utricle with the neurons and the saccule with the neurons. And those are going to bend depending on the movement that you make. So what about those little rocks in the ear? They're called otoliths, and they are calcium carbonate. They're calcium carbonate crystals, kind of like what you have in your bone, and they're just balancing on the top there. And when you dip your head or tilt it, they actually slide a little bit. They slide on this gel, and they create a greater force for the bending of these hairs, little hair cells. Remember, they're not really hairs, they are neurons. We're calling them hair cells. Vertigo is a condition where these little otoliths slip around unintentionally. So if all of a sudden you have this slipping of these and it starts to bend these neurons in your ear, it gets very confusing because you know that you're not tilting your head, and yet it's feeling like you're tilting your head. So it's very confusing sensation, and it can be so bad that somebody needs to sort of lie down flat when it happens, because people who suffer from vertigo really have a rough time with it. So we're going to stop it there, and the next section that we would start would be on these little loopy areas of the ear. Remember, these loopy areas are not called loopy areas, they're called semicircular canals. And we will look at that next. Thanks for listening.